Appreciate in value. Call now. Century 21 Realty Management. The number 647-5003. Or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman checks himself into the hospital for treatment of clinical depression.
His chief of staff says Fetterman's clinical depression recently became more serious. It's something Fetterman has experienced for years. The Capitol attending physician recommended inpatient care at Walter Reed. He is there on a voluntary basis. Fetterman missed months of campaigning after suffering a stroke. Fetterman went to the hospital last week after not feeling well. Doctors ruled out another stroke. Democratic New Mexico Senator Ben Ray Lujan suffered a stroke himself last year. Fetterman has now missed 8 of the Senate's 24 votes this year. Now Fetterman uses an electronic screen to help him process language during hearings.
Fox's Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill. Famed broadcaster and former St. Louis Cardinals star Tim McCarver dies.
During his playing days, McCarver won a pair of World Series titles as a catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals and then went on to an incredibly successful career analyzing the game on TV. After retiring, McCarver quickly became one of the most recognizable broadcasters in the game and became known nationally, especially during his nearly 2 decades at Fox. He was the lead analyst for more than 20 World Series broadcasts and won 6 Emmys for his work on television. As a player, McCarver was a 2-time All-Star during his 21-year career and formed a successful partnership with Hall of Fame pitcher Bob Gibson. Tim McCarver was 81. I'm Eric Messersmith, Fox News.
A federal judge is getting impatient with FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried and his use of the internet while on bail. The judge suggesting that putting SBF in jail might eventually be the most effective way to prevent him from communicating on electronic devices in ways that cannot be traced. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Topeka's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Topeka's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Topeka's Best listeners with Topeka's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Topeka's Best.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here we go on another end of the week, Jose and my least favorite day of the week, because no Tall Tales on Saturday and Sunday. But we'll tough it out, get through it, be back on Monday. So let's start out with Zemi Ikatni. So the challenge now, as I've explained before, this used to be a really interesting part of the show when I could compare the editorials of the two daily newspapers, figure out which one was the better, give it the blue star. Unfortunately, the Post has been on strike for about 3 months. And as far as the Daily News is concerned, they don't do editorials except on rare occasions. So the challenge has now become, what kind of silly excuse will the Daily News have for not writing an editorial? Today's a good example. Our view, armed robberies raise concerns. Stay safe, Guam. On Monday evening, the police department received a call about a robbery at Pizza Hut in Manilo. Then during the wee hours on Tuesday, just a few hours later, another robbery was reported to the police at Mobil gas station in Jonia. At first, I thought maybe they were trying to steal pizza, but you can't buy pizza at a Mobil station, right? And then just after 6, another robbery occurred at OS7 Mart in Manilo. All the robberies involved handguns. How many more robberies should we expect this month alone? How about next week? The series of robberies should be concerning, especially to local businesses. Nowadays, it's concerning to be at a small store when there are very few people around, and it doesn't matter whether you're an owner, an employee, or a customer. Anyone could be held at gunpoint when a robber walks in. So what's the solution here, Jose? Carry your own gun. If that's the way it is.
I thought you were going to say more editorials.
Yeah. While we're still waiting for updates on the suspects, the police department in September of last year shared some tips on how business owners can keep their businesses safe and how to deter criminals. According to GPD, having an audible alarm as opposed to a silent alarm rattles perpetrators and keeps them from lingering on the property. GPD also advised businesses to work closely with law enforcement on reporting crime, and merchants were advised to get help identifying security vulnerabilities. Guam Police Department spokeswoman Officer Berlin Savella, she of the illegal parking fame, said businesses are also encouraged to reduce the cash flow kept in the till during the evening. Security can be enhanced by clearing away signs, stickers, and posters that block visibility in windows and doors. Surveillance video has helped identify a number of suspects recently. High-quality video can be used for homeowners as well as business owners. These tips may not stop a perpetrator, but they can help and improve the security of businesses, and that will help business owners protect employees, customers, and property. We appreciate the police department's efforts in investigating these armed robberies, and we encourage members of the public who have information about crimes to contact authorities. Remember to stay safe and stay vigilant, Guam. Look out for one another. Yeah. Hard hitting. Look out for one another, Jose.
Huggings, not muggings.
Let's take a peek at the card and see what we've got on the card for today. And, of course, we start out with systemic racism. The calendar for public law 36-34 violations is vacant today. There are none. First substantive item is the usual suspects versus Admiral Nicholson. Then we've got Amanda versus Carl and everybody but Snow White and half the dwarves, right? We've got Guam Legislature versus CLT, Chamorro Land Trust lessees. We've got the GEC, Guam Election Commission versus abortion. And then I get down to research versus masks, government versus First Amendment, that's my friend Jonathan Turley, etc. So we got kind of a thin card today, so today's one of those days. If you want to pick up on something that's not on the card and you time it right, we can be a little bit flexible today because it's a thin card. So starting out with systemic racism, not much to talk about here, except I did see a really good video, a Bill Maher video. You know who Bill Maher is, right? Atheist, hard left, etc. Even Bill Maher gets it. Even he does. And he had a real sarcastic 5-minute video calling out the idiocy of this whole woke movement. So, and he compared the narrative with the truth and said the narrative always wins. So he's probably a tailgater. He probably knows the difference between red and orange.
He wears this shirt.
Probably does.
But doesn't go outside yet.
Yeah, not yet. He's not ready to come out of the closet yet with his tailgater shirt. Yeah. Okay, then next we've got the usual suspects versus Admiral Nicholson. And this ran in the Daily News. What to do with all the old bombs? Now, they're not talking about 15-year-old cars here, Jose. Lawmakers, military, activists weigh options. There is no telling when Guam will be cleared of unexploded ordnance that accumulated during World War II and other wars. Lawmakers, the Environmental Protection Agency, activists. Now, what's an activist, Jose?
It's like a fine wine. WHINE.
Ah, very good. Yeah. And top military brass sat down Thursday night, to talk about how to regulate open detonation used to dispose of much of the ordnance found in the community. Military officials say they need to use open detonation for emergency ordnance disposal, but others contend the military shouldn't be given a blank check to determine what needs to be blown up. You know, I'm thinking about drafting up legislation to create the 36th Guam Legislature Bomb Disposal Squad.
Most of them will be duds.
And Sabina Paris will be in charge of the bomb disposal squad, and she can choose as many members of the legislature as are necessary to accomplish the mission, to go out and whenever we find unexploded bombs, it'll be their job to dig them out and dispose of them. Since they're so good at doing this, right? They know so much about it. Military officials say they need to use open detonation for emergency ordnance disposal, but others contend the military shouldn't be given a blank check. Yeah. Citing safety concerns, Rear Admiral Benjamin Nicholson, commander of Joint Region Marianas, asked lawmakers to repeal the recent ban on open detonation until proper regulations can be thoroughly worked out. The ban, enacted in December, will take effect starting February 27. Quote, it does not appear the Department of Defense will be able to provide emergency response as requested by the government of Guam. So, okay, you don't want us to dispose of them? Then we'll just leave them in the ground and hope that they're not detonated in the ground accidentally. World War II munitions routinely found during construction are exempted from the ban. Even that was a floor amendment. That wasn't in an original bill. But the steps needed to identify what era a decades-old bomb is from are too risky, said the Admiral. The steps required to understand what era that it comes from could involve chipping away at the outside of the case. Yeah, this is, you know how you determine if a gun is loaded? Look down the barrel and then pull the trigger. And if it doesn't fire, then it means it's not loaded. If it's dead, if you're dead, it means it was loaded. Yeah, so scratch on the outside of the bomb, see if you can take off any loose plates or something, and get inside and see what era it's. See if there's a date inside.
It's like Christmas. Just shake it.
Yeah, because I suspect inside that bomb, there's a date that said best if used before January 1, 1946. There is unidentified ordnance from the Korean and Vietnam War floating around, which the Department of Defense had stockpiled and covered with dirt. U.S. EPA recognized that old, degraded munitions can't be safely disposed of with alternative methods, the Admiral said, and the Department of Defense complied with all environmental laws. That's not good enough. A revision of the ban will have to take place, with U.S. EPA pointing to technical issues. Senator Sabina Paris introduced Bill 35, which will change the ban's exemption from World War II ordnance to any explosive that the EPA determines can only be disposed of with open detonation.
Then why have that law?
Yeah.
It's saying we're going to pass a law, but we're going to nullify it within the law.
Yeah. So the EPA is supposed to be able to determine whether or not. Now, out there at EPA, I don't remember if it's 5 or 6 demolition experts they have on the staff out there, right? I suspect that anybody out at EPA who can speak freely is going to say, yeah, right, you find a bomb, call us, and we'll come right down there and tell you how to do it.
It's a one-time service.
Yeah. The senator disagreed with the need to reverse the ban and accused Nicholson of spreading misinformation. Pots and kettles here, Jose. In his testimony, adding that she would have to review it. Uh-oh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For someone who's anti-military, she sure likes to go to war with the military.
She sure does. And she didn't take the time to review it when he sent it, when she introduced the bill. Walter Leon Guerrero, administrator of Guam EPA, said his agency had identified 2 or 3 alternative technologies for munition disposal that could be put in place for Guam. It's also ready to work with military EOD teams for any emergency permitting that's necessary. However, legacy munitions, like unexploded 500-pound bombs, don't have an alternative disposal method. So if you find firecrackers left over from the 4th of July in 1985, there are alternative ways of disposing of those. But if it's a 500-pound bomb, the only thing you can do is very carefully disarm it, remove it from the ground, take it up to Anderson, and explode it. There's no alternative for that at this point. Maybe there will be in the next year or a couple of years, but at this point, to deem all open detonation as illegal or not worthy or useful tech to use for disposal would be, I think, erroneous. I'd say it's dangerous. Okay, Monica Flores, see why I'm saying the usual suspects? With activist group Protege La Texan, pointed to the military's outstanding permit application to operate an open detonation range at Anderson, which was submitted in 2021. If you look at the permit application, there are a lot of new munitions that will be treated with open detonation and pose tremendous risks to our community, she said. Tremendous risks. Flores said the military had a track record of non-compliance in Guam, Okinawa, Puerto Rico, and Hawaii. Attorney David Henkin of environmental firm Earth Justice said the military shouldn't be given a blank check from Guam EPA, noting that the current permit asks for the ability to detonate up to 30,000 pounds of explosives a year. U.S. EPA had identified other emergency response technologies which were already used in other jurisdictions. Henkin said he supported Bill 35, which would put Guam EPA in the driver's seat when it came to determining what could be open detonated and what could not. That call needs to be made by the Guam legislature, by Guam EPA and the U.S. EPA, not the military, because left to their own devices, they're just going to continue to do the same old thing illegally, Henkin said. Yeah, now this guy, David Henkin, I don't know of any, I've got a pretty good handle on who's a lawyer in Guam and who isn't. I never heard of this David Henkin before. I think he must be a colonizer, Jose. So we need to have a colonizer come over here and tell us what to do with our unexploded bombs.
Well, all he has to do is say, they should not be exploding this on our land.
Yeah. Paris asked whether Guam was any closer to clearing out the ordnance that was scattered over the years. That's a smart question, right? How could anyone possibly know what's out there?
Maybe they tagged themselves on Google Maps.
Yeah, in 1944.
In 1944.
Yeah. Are we any closer to find them all, she asked. Ma'am, I have no idea, Nicholson responded. The military worked to survey where ordnance might be found, but bombs were found even in low-risk areas. A 500-pound bomb was found under the foundation of a building at Anderson recently. Brigadier General Paul Birch, commander of the 36th Wing at Anderson, chimed in. There were 16 days of continual bombardment on the island during the Battle of Guam. There was no accounting for how much munitions were dropped here, Birch said. We would all like to think we're getting closer to zero, and by definition we are, every time we remove something. But to say there's a cap, we can't do that. Paris said she recognized the safety concerns. Now, here comes the really important part of Paris's remarks, Jose. This is our homeland. We're going to be here for generations, and it just doesn't seem right to be exposed to these chemicals. Much better to be exposed to these unexploded 500-pound bombs. If ordnance wasn't openly detonated, it could explode on its own and become a hazard. Quote, it would be great if we didn't have to do that. But today, that's where we are. Miss, I hate the military, the usual suspects, right? I don't care what it is that you guys want to do. I don't care how much it helps us. We don't like the military, and we're going to let you know it. And if we can be a little bit edgy and snotty, we're going to do that in the process.
You know, I'm going to say this again to all those who are listening that are in the legislature right now. Senator Paris is one senator writing this bill, but all of you have the power to not pass this bill and to be a little bit smart about this. I understand there's concerns about the environment, but like the Admiral said, what are you going to do? Just leave them there? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense to pass a bill like this. Or they should never have passed this bill.
Well, the first bill should never have been passed. Yep. This one is kind of an attempt to clean it up.
Just reverse it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
Just repeal it. Yeah, that's what they should do. Okay, next we've got Sheltonverse as a cast of characters. Now, you remember this all goes back to May of last year when the Carl accused members of the board at the Visitors Bureau of conflict of interest in violating the open government law. Chair of the Visitors Bureau Board of Directors, Milton Morinaga, canceled meetings, and no meetings have been held since May of last year. A legislature did enact a statute allowing the president of the Visitors Bureau to submit the budget, etc. And basically, not having board meetings has really freed up Carl Gutierrez to run the Visitors Bureau. Maybe it's not such a bad thing after all. My own analysis is that any time you're in a government agency and you're the director and you're working for a board, it's worth at least another 25 or 50 grand right there. Just the fact that you're working for a board. because of the accusations, Morinaga said, we've got to find out what's going on here. Joe McDonald was counsel for the Visitors Bureau. He was tasked to do a business risk assessment report, which he did. He found that in many critical areas, the bylaws are out of sync with the enabling legislation for the Visitors Bureau. He laid that out in a comprehensive report. He's developed amended bylaws that conform to statute. So the next thing would be then to have a meeting, adopt the new bylaws, hold legal elections of directors, etc. Now, there was a meeting scheduled on Monday at 9 o'clock for the members and at 1 o'clock for the board. On Friday, Jesse Lujan, who is the acting chairman of the legislative committee that has jurisdiction over GVB, called an oversight hearing. Amanda Shelton, the chairman, was off island. So he had 4 people lined up to come and testify. R. Carl, Jerry Paris, the deputy, Milton Morinaga, the chairman of the board, and Joe McDonald, who is counsel for the Visitor Bureau. And I applauded Jesse for doing it that way instead of turning an oversight hearing into what they often turned into be, which is a cluster fumble. Because you only want, and if you're really talking oversight instead of oral free-for-all, you only want people who are knowledgeable and perhaps have the ability to give you the facts that you need to give you enlightened legislation. 6 minutes before the oversight hearing was to start, Amanda Shelton comes sweeping into town 2 days early from her trip and canceled the meeting. Bringing about all kinds of criticism from, obviously, Jesse Lujan, who really had the rug pulled out from under him, physically, metaphorically and actually, Joanne Brown and Tello. Tello accused Amanda of just protecting her uncle, Sam Shinohara, who's on the board at the Visitors Bureau. The next thing that happened was that Carl canceled the meeting of the members of the GVB, and Morinaga canceled the directors' meeting. Now, there may be a meeting of the members on the 24th of this month. That's what Carl alluded to. In the meantime, Walt Parkinson, who never saw an argument he couldn't get into the middle of, came along and defended Shelton, saying, well, you know, she's the committee chairman, and pointed out that the Republicans who were objecting to her, well, that the one who was objecting to her, Tello, obviously voted for her to be chairman of that committee. So that would have been the time to raise any potential conflicts of interest. That was a good point. Okay, now the latest round is Amanda Shelton speaks up. And this is what Amanda Shelton said on KUAM last night. Senator Amanda Shelton is breaking her silence after, confusion erupted at last Friday's Visitors Bureau oversight hearing. The hearing was canceled by Shelton minutes before it was about to begin. KUAM News spoke with Shelton, who seemed unfazed when her colleague, Republican Senator Tello Taitigui, said this: if Senator Shelton wants to play a game with us, then let's expose her for what she really is, protecting her uncle at GVB. That's what Tello said. And then coming back to Shelton, no, I don't have any comments about that, Shelton said. I think I exercised my power as the chairman of the committee. Now, I want to go back over that sentence. I think that's a really important sentence. No, I don't have any comments about that. In other words, about Tello's accusation that she's covering for her uncle. I think I exercised my power. So she let it slip. You know, a gaffe, the definition of a gaffe is when a politician accidentally tells the truth and exposes where he or she is actually coming from. So it's about power. Jesse Lujan, you're not the power, you're not the boss of me. If we're going to have an oversight hearing, I'll call it, not you. And it's, you know, if I have the power, I can cancel it any damn time I want to. She didn't say I exercise my discretion,
ability,
authority,
duty,
power.
Power,
yeah. And the fact that you have power doesn't mean that it's okay to use it. You know, since this was all done very publicly, she owes us an explanation as to why she did it. Not just, well, I can do it. I got the power, and I did it. Nah, 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 nah. That's kind of the way I read the sentence. Tydegui's comment forced Democrat freshman Walt Parkinson to speak up in Shelton's defense with this sign appearing behind him stating she, quote, did nothing wrong. Shelton today said, the hearing with GVB is still on. I will hold a hearing when I deem that appropriate, when the parties involved will be available, and we could have a really thorough discussion together that will be fruitful to helping improve our visitor industry and bringing back our tourists to Guam. So that's my focus, is at the chair at this time. Well, the purpose of oversight hearings is not to have fruitful discussions. It's for the senators to gather the facts that they need to enact enlightened legislation. It's a step forward that GVB Vice President Jerry Paris, who in yesterday's story was identified as the Paris.
Well, maybe he was thinking of the Carl.
Could be, yeah. Yeah, but we don't have an R Paris on the show, right?
We do not.
Yeah. So it could, you know, when they referred to the Paris, I never worked for the Census Bureau, but in my own experience, there are actually a plethora of Parises on this island. There's more than one.
Acres of Paris.
Exactly. Prides of Paris. Riots of Parises. Herds, flocks.
A murder of Parises.
Exactly. Anyhow, Jerry Paris is looking forward and ready to share the progress the Bureau is making in recovering tourism, which is kind of like a side gig for the Visitors Bureau when they're not kind of doing the human recreation of cockfighting. Yeah, and then yeah, let me put this away. This is getting to be a pretty thick file here, Jose. And next I've got CLT, as you were, Guam Legislature versus the CLTC. But let's take a short break first.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. No service
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit LaderaTowerGuam.com or GuamProperties.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, next I've got the CLTC, Guam Legislature versus the CLTC. And, the kerfuffle began in January when the new executive director of the CLTC, she of the 19th floor, what's her name again, Jose?
Alice Tyrone.
Alice Tyrone sent a notice saying you guys got 30 days to pack up and get the hell out of there. And there's been some back and forth there. And according to KOM last night, a 90-day extension was granted for the Raceway Park. And the Raceway Federation says they aren't giving up without a fight. The cease and desist notice at the Raceway Park is extended. The Jigo Park has been given 90 more days by the Land Trust Commission during a 2-hour meeting. This would take on March 2, the date of the eviction notice. Take us to March. No, that isn't 90 days. The sentence doesn't make any sense, does it? It's a hard-won fight for the racing community, and the Racing Federation general manager said Henry Simpson. One thing, it kind of looks to me like they really don't want us there. Wow. Henry Simpson, he thinks they don't want the Raceway Federation there. I wonder whatever gave him that idea.
I don't know why he's thinking that.
Yeah. He's just assuming a fact, not an evidence, maybe, huh? That seems to be the outlook, that we don't fit their mission statement and we're a difficult tenant to deal with. During the drawdown discussion, CLTC members brought up safety concerns, alleged mineral extraction, lack of insurance, fears of liability, and more. CLTC's John Regis chimed in. We're not against or prevent the good that happens up at the raceway. We just want to make the best use of the land. Simpson says it's mostly misinformation that was floating around as CLTC members changed throughout the past 20 years. We have the liability and insurance. Okay. And there is no such thing as mineral extraction, Simpson said. It's kind of a made-up word. The guys have been racing out there for over 20 years, and there have been no accidents. It's so much safer than being out on the road, and there's control. For now, the 90-day extension allows for Motorsport Festival Smoke and Wheels to continue at the drag strip in late April, but he said the fight isn't over. Is the 90-day extension enough for you guys? It's enough to get maybe a legislative answer to the situation, Simpson said. Hang in there. We're not going down without a fight. The CLTC plans to meet next month where they could decide what will become of the land the raceway sits on once the 90 days are up. In another article, I noticed the possibility that the real property should be transferred to Parks and Rec, WRECK. Now, here's the main article here that ran in the Post. The Land Trust Commission has decided to extend the eviction notice issued to the Raceway Federation for 90 days, allowing upcoming events to continue. Commissioners came to the decision after about 2 hours of discussion Thursday afternoon. The Federation, which is constructing and operating the raceway, initially was given 30 days to vacate the property effective February 1. Thursday's decision now sets the eviction deadline to June, and the commission will continue to gather documentation and information for subsequent considerations of the property. We do have the public law that allows for the 50-year lease, but it's a matter of where do we begin, CLTC Chair John Regis Jr. said near the conclusion of the meeting. The CLTC and the Federation initially entered into a license agreement for the Jigo Raceway in 1998. Now, I've explained a couple of times the difference between a license and a lease. That agreement was intended to last 20 years, and it expired in 2018. That same year, the legislature passed what would become Public Law 34-142, which authorized the CLTC to commercially lease the property where the raceway is located for 50 years. The Federation was given the right of first refusal, and if taken, which the Federation did, the CLTC had 180 days to negotiate and submit a lease to the legislature for approval. That never happened. Future options. Regis said Thursday the commissioners have options for the future use of the raceway land. Commissioner Earl Garrido said at this point he would say to partition the property. That way you can make more than one group of people unhappy. That's an option. Yeah, Regis said. Let's give you guys some time to consider, come up with recommendations. The staff will continue to provide you with information that you need, and we'll put it in our next meeting. Commissioner David Herrera asked for the property to be reappraised because of changes to the surrounding area, noting that adjacent private properties have been graded down to street level, and that may impact the appraisal. However, others discussed the deferring the appraisal until the outcome of the property is determined. Why do an appraisal if we decide in the near future to renegotiate a lease with a raceway, Garrido said, or bid it out? Regis quickly added. And part of the bid process, we need to have an appraisal. CLTC issued eviction notices in late January, etc. There have been concerns about grading work and access route provided to Smith Bridge, Guam, alleged mineral extraction or mining and other issues, all of which were admitted by Henry Simpson in another media release. Yeah, we're letting Smith drive across it, and yeah, we over-excavated, and yeah, we have sold this much stuff, but we're denying it. Federation General Manager Henry Simpson said there's no mining happening at the raceway, and the material that has been removed is a result of grading. Mineral extraction is a phony name, Simpson said Thursday in response to a question from Regis about whether a draft 50-year lease included mineral extraction. There's no such thing as mineral extraction. That's like a gold mine or silver mine or something like that. So he's being really technical. It's not mineral, it's coral. Yeah, small rocks. It's not metallic. So it's not mineral extraction. We're doing grading permitted by the Department of Public Works, engineered by engineers licensed on Guam who measured it and said, yes, you can grade it down to 520 feet. 520 feet is the level that our draft script was on. Mineral extraction is a boogeyman thrown in there to throw people off. Okay, and then there's a little bit about 34-142, which prohibits mineral extraction from being part of the 50-year lease term. The version of a draft lease agreement shown to the Daily Post did include a provision in the property use section regarding removal of topsoil or coral as a part of property alteration, but the activity would not be considered mineral extraction as stated in 34-142. This provision also retains 50% ownership for CLTC, appearing to essentially allow that it had been done under the 1998 license. Now, I've got the statute, and I want to go through it, but I don't want to keep... Let's see who it is here. I don't want to keep another Joe waiting too long. He's a very patient guy, but let's give him a break. Tell me about the raceway, another Joe.
No, actually, Bob, you were getting to exactly what I was curious about. So someone doesn't want any possibility of future mining with this particular whatever the contract is. So that's pretty much what they're saying is the, I don't know what you call them, the powers that be, or the officials, or whatever you want to call them, the titles. They don't want that partnership with these people. That seems to be the case.
I think you're probably right. Another Joe.
And so that's okay. So I'll just keep listening to Bob, because it's getting interesting to see, if they get to, if they get to keep doing what they're doing. Thanks, Uncle Bob. I'll just keep listening.
Okay, another Joe. Okay, so I've got the bill here, and of course you've got the obligatory page of legislative findings. I'm going to take a short break and come back to the bill.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Okay, so here we go again here. I just want to go back and check something in the story here. Yeah, the talking about mineral extraction. So one of our posters says, well, calcium is a mineral. That's true. No question about it. It's a mineral. It's not metallic. And I think that's what Henry was alluding to. You guys are thinking of gold, metallic minerals, whereas coral, although a mineral, is not metallic. Okay, I've got the statute here. And the first thing I look at is this statute. This was a Thomas Hatta bill. And the first thing I notice is that it's not codified, telling me that somebody didn't think it was very important. You just slap the sections together. You've got 6 sections, including Section 6, the useless severability clause, instead of taking the time to figure out where this would fit in the Guam Code Annotated and codifying your provisions. So it couldn't have been very important to Tom Hatta, who was the author of this bill. And we start out with Section 2, notwithstanding any other provision of law. The legislature authorizes the Land Trust Commission to lease lots 71, etc., for a period of 50 years for commercial purposes, to include the operation of a raceway, related facilities, and various outdoor events. Now, wouldn't you think that that language by itself and nothing more at least strongly implies that the terms of that lease would include lease payments that equal the fair market value of the real property? Isn't that what you'd think? Yeah. Knowing what the purpose of the Land Trust Commission, the Land Trust Commission is set up for the lessees. That's the purpose of it. It was set up in 1975 so the Chamorros could lease a piece of land somewhere on the island. Later on, we changed it from Chamorros to something else, but that didn't change the purpose of the lease. It was, of the law, it's to provide leases, 99-year leases for selected folks. And the idea is that there can be commercial leases of some of that land, of some of the Crown land, not the Crown land, but some of the land, and the proceeds of the commercial leases is to develop the infrastructure for the leaseholders. So it suggests, if nothing more than the sentence I just read, that those leases should be for fair market value of the land. So how are you going to determine that if you go back to the two board members who said, yeah, I don't know if we need that appraisal or not? You got to appraise it. You have to. Otherwise, you won't charge the right amount of rent.
Or it'll just be arbitrary.
Exactly. CLTC shall give the right of first refusal to the current licensee, provided that if the granted the right of first refusal, GRF must express its intention to the executive director no later than 15 days from the date of enactment of this act. I don't know why that's there. What else would the CLTC do but say, yeah, we want the land? Lease terms. Notwithstanding any other provisions of law, legislature authorizes CLTC to negotiate the terms of the lease for Lot 71, etc., provided that such negotiated lease shall be submitted to the legislature for approval by statute. If the current licensee exercises the right of first refusal, CLTC shall within 180 days exercise the right of first refusal, submit the lease negotiated with the with GRF to the legislature for approval. Except as specifically provided in this act, conditions of the lease shall comply with 21 GCA 75-122. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, mineral extraction is prohibited and shall not be included in the terms of the lease. Okay, so this is what they've done. They've said, you have the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, you have the ability to enter into a lease with the Raceway Federation. You got a half year to do it. The lease cannot allow for the extraction of coral, etc. So what if the Land Trust Commission doesn't want to do it? What happens? Nothing. Now, you could look at this through the framework of a writ of mandate. You know, when you talk in terms of what rights a person has or a government or whatever, it really kind of boils down to what a judge will order after a trial. And you're not going to get a judge to order, you guys got to sit down and finish that lease, because that involves discretion. And we know from the history leading up to here, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission didn't want to lease that land to the Raceway Federation. They see it. The current members see it. See, their job is to work on behalf of the lessees, not on behalf of the Raceway Federation. So this is really poorly drawn legislation. And as Henry Simpson said, when they came on for a hearing, or maybe when it was on the floor, they paraded 100 people around the legislature. So I suspect that the people who voted for this figured this is BS legislation. You might as well enact a blank piece of paper, but it'll play well to the peanut gallery. They'll think we're really good guys. They'll all vote for us, etc. So let's pass it. What the hell? It doesn't make any difference. Because it didn't make any difference.
It sounds like you were there in the room.
Yeah. And then there's a provision in here that says where the lease revenues go, into the Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund, etc. But it doesn't even it doesn't say what I said is implied, that the land has to be leased for fair market value. And of course, I can't resist coming back to what I've said over and over on this show. What I'm looking for is an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. So if you really wanted to do this, if you really wanted to have that land leased out for a commercial enterprise, folks down there in the legislature, and you really wanted to take it away from the Chamorro Land Trust, you should have enacted a statute that said you could lease this land for a term certain for fair market value to be determined by 2 appraisers or whatever. That would have been the way to do it. Instead of coming up with something like this, that's just it's a cluster fumble at best. And I suspect that there's not going to be an easy end to it either.
Well, they just delayed the cluster fumble for another 90 days.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But one of the things that kind of surprises me, Henry mentioned that, somebody in the commission mentioned that they had 100 people parading around the legislature. Where are all the lessees? The lessees should be mobbing that commission.
That's for us.
Yeah, don't do this. Don't let them have our land. But nobody seems to be that interested. Let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the Lou Leon Guerrero show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Better tracking for UFOs. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden tells the country he's ordered his team to come up with a better plan to deal with unknown flying objects in U.S. airspace.
President Biden has ordered his national security advisor to lead a government-wide effort to create an up-to-date inventory of high-altitude objects in U.S. airspace.
I've directed my team to come back to me with sharper rules for how we will deal with these unidentified objects moving forward, distinguishing between those that are likely to pose safety and security risks that necessitate action and those that do not.
Those rules of engagement will be briefed to certain members of Congress in a classified setting and will remain classified to prevent U.S. adversaries from exploiting them and evading U.S. air defense. At the Pentagon, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
A special grand jury that investigated efforts by then-President Trump and his allies to overturn his election loss in Georgia is recommending the DA seek indictments for witnesses who may have lied under oath. Turkish authorities say they're investigating more than 100 people they believe are linked to the construction of buildings that failed to withstand the powerful earthquakes.
The disaster has killed more than 40,000 people, but miraculously, Elena Olmez is not one of them. Family members hugged rescuers as the 17-year-old was taken to medical care. She spent more than 10 days buried in the remains of her building. That's slightly longer than 13-year-old Mustafa. The hubbub of workers putting the injured boy on a stretcher. But these rescues are becoming rarer. The focus now on helping those left homeless. Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
And crude oil lower at this hour, hovering around $77.52 a barrel. America's listening to Fox News.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Looking for a new home or that special place to spend your retirement? Century 21 Realty Management has the place for you. Ladera Towers Condominium in Manila. Luxury living you deserve. Amenities like a gourmet kitchen, a large jacuzzi tub, private lanai with a magnificent ocean view, and 24/7 security. Other amenities, large swimming pool, couple of tennis courts, 3-bedroom condo units are available right now. This is an opportunity you should look at now before they're all gone. Call us now at Century 21 Realty Management, 647-5003, or visit the website, LaderaTowerGuam.com or GuamProperties.com.
One of the final witnesses called by the prosecution in the murder trial of a once prominent South Carolina attorney testified about a shooting the attorney says he suffered.
South Carolina agent Ryan Kelly investigated a shooting Alex Murdaugh said he was the victim of that occurred a few months after Murdaugh's wife and son, Maggie and Paul, were killed, and after Murdaugh had been fired from his law firm. Kelly said Alex said he had a flat tire and a man who stopped by to help him shot him. Later, in an interview, though, played for the jury, Murdaugh admits to investigators that he had asked his drug dealer, Curtis Eddie Smith, to kill him.
I told him that things were getting ready to get really bad and that I would be better off not here. And I asked him to shoot me.
He admitted to paying Smith tens of thousands of dollars a month for OxyContin. Murdaugh was later charged with insurance fraud because of this shooting. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A prosecutor in Chicago says a gang dispute led to the December shooting near a high school that killed 2 students and wounded 2 others. Meantime, in El Paso, Texas, police say a shooting at a mall this week that killed 1 and injured 3 was a random incident, a fight between 2 groups. It was a turtle good day in Juno Beach, Florida.
A loggerhead sea turtle named Rocky paused for a second in the sand before crawling into the Atlantic after spending 6 weeks at Florida's Loggerhead Marine Life Center. 220-pound Rocky was found floating off North Hutchinson Island December 29th with a tear in her lung caused by a boat strike. She couldn't dive or go underwater, but after a couple of weeks of rehab, she was given the all clear. Hundreds of people cheered her on from the beach as she returned to her home wearing a new tracking device. It was Loggerhead Marine Life Center's first public sea turtle release since 2021. Gianna Gelosi, Fox News.
And Dow futures down more than 100 points at this hour after stocks closed sharply lower Thursday. The Dow sliding 431 points. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatnya location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Let's hear it again, Jose.
All right. For those who are watching the live stream, the links are in the comment to obtain your I'm a Tailgater t-shirt. Or you can point your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. Order your shirt by clicking on the link that has the shirt and the beard. When that shirt arrives, put that shirt on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And you too can see yourself in the I'm a Tailgater Rogues Gallery.
And what a wonderful experience that's going to be for you, right, Jose?
It's a nice-looking group of people as well.
It certainly is the best-looking group of people here on the island, I think. Okay, so every Friday we run the Lulian Guerrero show. Lulian Guerrero is our governor and is the most pro-abortion person here on the island. Probably more so than any other citizen here on the island. Notwithstanding that, we elected her to be our governor, but let's find out how she really feels about abortion and infanticide. She testified at a public hearing several years ago. Here's the video.
And members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Lulian Guerrero, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts and comments regarding Bill 195-32. I am aware that there is already federal legislation that addresses the issue at hand, thus making this legislation unnecessary. As I read the bill, what was glaring to me is that you are now walking into the realm of medical practice that is not your area of expertise. By passing this bill, you're saying to me that you are allowing a special interest group to say that you and they know better than the experts in obstetrics, family practice, pediatrics, neonatology, and medicine. By way of this bill, you have taken away the discretion, the responsibility, the acumen, and the judgment of that medical professional who is on the ground experiencing the circumstances and is more equipped to make the decisions. There are medical standards vetted through scientific research and medical knowledge that govern the practice of doctors and guide them in making their decisions. By way of this bill, you have said to our doctors, who are well respected and highly regarded in our community, we have no confidence in your ability. This bill not only diminishes the medical profession, but it further carries them to jail by criminalizing them if they refuse to abide by the mandate. By way of this bill, you have affirmed that doctor to have committed aggravated murder, and for that crime, we will put that doctor in jail for life. And by the way, they will rot in jail because you are not eligible for parole, work release, or educational programs outside the confines of prison. If this bill passes, we as a community, through your representation, will have mandated a government policy that ignores medical expertise and puts not only our doctors, but also our nurses, medical assistants, our physician assistants, and any health professional present at that event, and we're putting them in jail. These health professionals are treasures. They are valuable resources. We are working hard to recruit and retain them, and now we send them a message that they may end up in jail for practicing their profession. I know and truly believe, Senators, that this is not the route you want to travel. This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. Instead, what this bill does is it will burden the family with enormous medical bills. On the conservative side, if care and treatment is given for a year, that family or the government, if the infant becomes a ward of the territory, will at a minimum pay $273,000 a year just on hospital room charges. This does not include pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and health professional time. So it will be $273,000 plus a year. This means taking away limited resources that could be used by others that may have a better chance of a quality of life. I know that some will say you cannot put a price tag on life and money should not be a factor. But the reality of the situation is the family, the government, does not have the human and economic resource to provide the care that is required to sustain a life that medical science will tell you is not living a quality of life. You struggle daily to meet the challenges of healthcare cost. We saw that with the hospital and health insurance debates that you guys made. And now this bill will further add on to the challenges when it does not have to. Lastly, I would like to make this comment. We all have a greater challenge in our island. The community's more concerned on how we can decrease our unemployment rate of 13.3%. We are very concerned on how we can work together to provide more jobs because our job growth has been stagnant over the last 5 years. We are very concerned about access to health care. We are very concerned that we are not screaming to the federal government to include us in the health insurance exchange so that we can have affordable health care to everyone. We are very concerned about how we can provide affordable housing to many first-time home owners. We are extremely concerned about the rising crimes we see today. People do not feel safe in their homes. Women are scared to go to the grocery stores alone because they fear that they could be robbed in the middle of the day. Employees do not feel safe in their work environment. Domestic violence is on the rise. Sexual assault of minors and rape cases are on the rise. You have in your campaigns pledged to work on these issues. You were all voted to help address these concerns. The issues you ran on were why you are my senators. Most of the voters did not vote for you based on whether you are pro-choice or pro-life. Please, let's get back on track to the more compelling issues at hand that have a greater impact to the quality of life of our people. I ask that when you are considering this bill to seriously consider the negative consequences of this piece of legislation that I have just enumerated. Please talk to as many people as you feel is necessary. Talk to the experts that can give you factual and objective information. I trust that you will do your due diligence, and I know that you will act in favor of the greater good of our community. And in so doing, you will arrive to the conclusion that this bill should not pass. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So there you go, Jose. We'll continue to play this on Fridays. I think it's really important that people see where our governor's head is at on this. And, you know, it's the classic evasion tactics that pro-abortion people use. Because when you're talking about abortion, you're really talking about one thing. You're talking about taking an innocent, helpless human life.
Somebody sent me a picture of a quote from Hillary Clinton, and I don't have the exact citation, but it went like this: "We need to protect abortion for our grandkids." You know, if she was very successful in abortion, there will be no grandkids.
Of course not.
And I think they don't understand that concept.
Yeah.
You know, this whole women's rights things is not going to occur when there are no women left.
Absolutely. But Lou plays the usual cards. You know, she doesn't talk really about what abortion's about. It's the taking of the life of a helpless, innocent human. But she uses, you know, the old, well, you know, you're solving this problem, but there are so many other problems that you should be solving. And I watched an interesting video last night on the Michael Matt show on TV, Amy Johnson. And I actually saw Amy Johnson give this speech back when I was at the Catholic Identity Conference. And Amy Johnson said, you know, when you go out and you campaign to raise money to cure cancer, do people say, well, why are you spending all this time to cure cancer? What about heart disease? Right.
And all the money we spend on research could be going for schools and roads.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same old thing. There is no logic in it at all. It's a classic case of bump and grind. You bump the subject and then you grind out something else. You rely on emotion, identity politics, etc. But none of the pro-aborts want to talk about what's really going on. And the question comes down to this: when is it okay? When is it permissible? When is it all right to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? And the answer to that question is always the same. It's like this kind of complicated thing I got into yesterday about the Judeo-Christian principles. And that is that there are moral principles that are as finite and concrete as mathematical or scientific principles. You know, that the radius of a circle is always pi r squared. And always, every time, no matter whether you like the circle or you don't like the circle or you don't like round out, whatever, it's always the same. And it's the same thing with moral absolutes. There are moral absolutes. But if you don't recognize God, if you think it all depends on humans, then you're left with nothing but relativism. And that's where we are now. We've got a huge number of people in this country that are moving us towards relativism. And of course, if you can take the life of a helpless innocent when he's in his mother's womb, Canada now has figured out, you know, old people, euthanasia. The ones that can't think straight, who couldn't make a rational decision, well, euthanasia is the thing for them.
You ever notice in movies how sometimes the bad guy likes to give away their plan, right, to what's going on? Mm-hmm. It's very interesting how Lilian Guerrero laid out her plan or her intent, but she sandwiched it between two distracting arguments. The first argument is you don't know what you're talking about, and the second argument we were just talking about is aren't there better matters we need to attend to?
You got so many more important things to do.
That middle argument of the plan she laid out at is something that humans have been fighting for years, and that is the marginalization and the demoralization of other groups of human beings not deemed worthy of life, worthy of liberty, worthy of anything else because they're not as good as you are. And so she did that in the middle. That argument was these babies are not worth anything.
That's right.
They will cost us too much money and they'll spend too much time and the doctors have better things to do. This group of humans, these babies that survived an abortion are not worth my time.
Exactly.
And people don't see that because they're distracted by her other two arguments.
Jeffrey Colburn chimes in with something that fits right into that. He said, when did the legislature become her senators?
In 2020.
Yeah. Truth. Yeah, exactly.
And they did it willingly.
Exactly. They signed up for it. Okay, next on the card here is GEC versus abortion, but I want to go back to the Land Trust Commission and something that Bunker Mano said here. If I can find it. Yeah, Bunker Mano says hobbies are important. 2, residents who enjoy the racetrack 3 generations. Why take that away just so certain demographic stands to gain? This is a premeditated plan executed, if you ask. The track belongs to the people. Well, and you know, it really all comes back if we just start at the beginning. And the beginning is here. We're looking for an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with law on at least a break-even basis. So what are basic government services? Is providing a racetrack for adults, is that a basic government service? You know, there's room to quibble about what is and what isn't a basic government service. I would suggest that highways, hospitals, schools, these are basic government services. But providing recreation for adults is not a basic government service. Now, you got an argument if you're talking about kids, people under 18, sports, physical development, etc. Every society has a responsibility for raising its children in an appropriate fashion. But I don't think it's ever the government's job to provide recreational opportunities for adults. So if there were such a demand for racing, for auto racing as Henry suggests there is, then the lease should have been according to what I mentioned earlier in the show. Yeah, you can lease it out, but you got to get fair market value for it. And then Bunker picks up on the a certain demographic. Well, the certain demographic in the beginning was clearly a certain demographic. And for all practical purposes, it still is. And that's why number 1 on my list of the things that I'm going to do to make Guam great again is to fight identity politics at the governmental level. It shouldn't make any difference what your race, ethnicity, sex, whatever. The government should treat you the same no matter what. So I'll go along with you on that one, Bunker Mano. And let's see who I got in the green room here. R. James, he wants to talk about the raceway. Go ahead, R. James.
Afternoon, Bob. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna make a comment here, and then I'm gonna explain my thoughts behind that. I think, and this is personal, but it's coming from my background experience, which also includes law enforcement, and I think this is very short-sighted. Okay. Besides all of the positive effects of having some camaraderie, an appropriate amount of one-upmanship, because that's what competition is in any sport or any hobby is. If you want to be the best, you're trying to be one up on everybody else. So I'm not saying that in a bad way, but the camaraderie, the technical savvy that's required for race vehicles and high performance, there's a lot of things here that keep young adults and kids in certain circumstances vested in high performance motorsports, motorcycle racing, off-roading, all these different types of things. Now, yes, it's true. Henry has profited from having the track out there and operating it all these years. But Henry has also been the one who has gotten a lot of the improvements and everything done. And now at the point in time when there's some decent roads and access and different things, now they want to snap it all back. And if you know, I mean, look, I understand everybody's got to have a profit and everybody's got to make hamburger money and, you know, fair value. But I think there also needs to be a little consideration rolled in there, too, for the decades of blood, sweat, and tears that everybody involved with the track has put into it to further it, to improve it. If these young people, and especially this 16 to probably 20-year-olds, quote unquote, have the carpet jerked out from under them, they're going to be racing on the street. Okay, and I did some street racing when I was a young man, and I found out how foolish and dangerous and inappropriate that it really is. And then when I was a little bit older young man, I actually had to ticket people, bust people, had to take a couple of vehicles to impound for street racing. But I also had to clean up a couple of really ugly accidents that involved fatalities when I was with the Sheriff's Department. And I think they're being very short-sighted and extremely foolish in trying to push this the direction that they're trying to push it. So that's kind of my thoughts on the track. Yeah, Judge, I totally agree with you. I don't think the government should provide entertainment in any way, shape, or form. But this is not something that happened last week, and the lease has expired after a year or two, and it didn't work out very well at that. This has been in place for a couple of decades now.
20 years.
At least, that I remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there needs to be a little bit of, oh my God, here comes that word, common sense that's applied to this on both sides. I mean, hey, maybe Henry needs to pay a little bit more rent. He's probably going to hate me for saying that, but they shouldn't all of a sudden overnight say, hey, look what they've done out here. Man, this is worth, $1 billion now. We need to charge $1 billion for it. I think there needs to be some common sense that's applied here, and there needs to be a little bit of give and take on both sides, because the takeaway, and it's a bad takeaway, is that if they're not able to do it in a safe, controlled environment, they're going to do it on the street, and somebody's going to get hurt. I've seen it happen too many times. In the state of Texas.
Yeah, I got your point, R. James. Let me just jump in here. You know, we don't value common sense here on Tall Tales. At the first of every month, I tell you that your common sense tells you that the Earth is what tells you that the Earth is flat, and that iron ships could never float, and that heavier than air objects could never fly. So common sense, people talk about it a lot, but as a general proposition, it stands for a definition of the prevailing standard of ignorance in a particular community. So if you start out, with a result that you like and then work backwards, oftentimes you sound very logical. But I want to start out at the front. What do I expect from my government? And with respect to this particular transaction, Henry Simpson had a 20-year license. And he knew it, anyone who sits down, I'm sure he was advised by counsel, was told that at the end of 20 years, whatever improvements you made to the land, locks next. Because if it's a permanent structure, it becomes part of the realty. If you've moved the dirt around a little bit, you don't get a reward for that. So he went into it with his eyes open. I've explained why I think the legislature really screwed this whole thing up to start with, probably irreparably. And then when it comes down to, if we don't do this for them, then they'll do that. We're leaving ourselves we're opening a door for extortion, so that the prevailing argument soon turns into, well, the government needs to do this for me, because if the government doesn't do it, then I'll go out and do it myself, or we'll go out and do it ourselves. And that no government can operate that way. I come back to a core principle that the government shouldn't get involved in subsidizing recreation for adults. So I hear what you're saying, and you make some points, but again, starting out with an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law, and at least a breaking, there isn't a whole lot of room for racetracks there, R. James.
Well, I didn't realize that this was to the point where somebody was trying to hold a gun to somebody's head and get concessions. I thought we were still at a point where somebody could sit down and, has the government put forth any plan? And I'm not aware of it, so please, if there is, enlighten me. But has the government put forth any plans as to what they're going to do with that property if the racetrack is no more? Are they going to open up a racetrack and try to operate it?
No.
Or is somebody else interested in taking it over and operating it?
It
And
comes.
that's the reason why I said, hey, Henry might need to pay some more rent. Okay, I understand that, and that would be totally fair. But I just have this feeling if they shut it down, it's going to become just another abandoned. I mean, look at all those buildings they took over years ago up there on the other side of the airport that they were going to put all the government offices in, and yeah, they ended up spending hundreds of thousands for temporary repairs and band-aids, and then they ended up bulldozing them. I think the same thing's probably going to happen to this. It's going to sit there dormant, and it's going to be just abandoned and vacant and an eyesore.
Well, if as it sits right now, it's the Chamorro Land Trust Commission's call. They can do with it whatever they want to do with it, so long as they operate within the statute. So it is a commercial property, and they could lease it out, and they could use the lease proceeds for their infrastructure fund, which is, talk about common sense. That would be a common sense approach. You got a racetrack there, but I don't see that removing Henry from it is not operating within the interests of the lessees and of the commission, because if Henry wants it, then he's going to have to sit down and negotiate a real lease with them for fair market value. Otherwise, as it sits right now, he's a stranger to the property.
Yep, no, I agree with that totally. I don't think Henry should really, quote unquote, be given any carte blanche, if you will. But it sounds to me like, and like I said, it could be wrong. It sounds to me like they're not even wanting to talk about it, discuss it, or even, going with a short term, maybe a 5-year or something. They're just like, okay, your lease is up, get out.
Well, that has to be the start. That has to be the beginning, because, if they're going to lease it out, then they should put it out for something, open the process up and say, we've got this racetrack here, and we want to lease it out. So make us an offer. But you can't do that if Henry Simpson is still operating his racetrack there. I mean, it's business, it's commercial. And I think the fact that it's actually business and commercial is somewhat concealed by the fact that, well, it's about auto racing, and I like auto racing, and the kids like it, and it's a lot of fun. It doesn't change the nature of it. It's still a commercial undertaking. I've probably been the most severe critic of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and I don't really trust them to do anything right. But they got to at least try to do the right thing. And the right thing is to open it up for lease and lease it out to the person that makes them the best offer. If that's Henry Simpson, fine.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, as long as they're still willing to at least try to keep it a racetrack, or at least make
it's a commercial effort. If somebody wants to come in there and open up an amusement park, fine. If somebody wants to come in and operate it as a racetrack, that's fine. But, the economics, the capitalist aspect of it will determine what the best use of that property is.
This is how you turn that highly emotional discussion of everybody loves this racetrack and everybody supports this racetrack, then put that into action. And then you'll have a viable argument of everybody loves this, because everyone's going to be putting in the money for it.
Yeah.
They'll be putting in the capital for it. All these businesses will provide for it, and it'll be viable that he can use that racetrack according to what the value of that land is.
Yeah.
But right now, it's a free pass on something that's not intended for.
Exactly. Yeah. If they could make more money turning it into a cemetery, then they should turn it into a cemetery. So that's the test, not how much we like auto racing or what people will do if it's not there, et cetera. All right, James.
No, I agree. It's an asset of the people, and it needs to be treated from a monetary standpoint. It needs to be treated fairly as such. It's just everything that I'm hearing is that they're not even trying to talk with Henry about extensions or renewals or different rates or anything. They're just saying, okay, you're out of here. Pack up your stuff, get out.
You know, R. James, they did give him a 90-day extension, so there you go. I think the horse is dead. No matter how much more we beat him, I don't think he'll come back to life, R. James, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you, so thanks for calling.
Yep. Have a good weekend,
So
Bob.
long. So, what are we going to do? Go to Wrigley Field. A little late for the 7th inning stretch.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
So here we go. Next item on the card is the Guam Election Commission versus abortion. And this is a story that ran in the Post. I'm not quite sure what the Post, I'm sorry, KUAM, not the Post. I'm not quite sure that they know what they're talking about. The headline is this: GEC legal counsel says if abortion law injunction lifted, referendum will follow. Now that's the truth that an awful lot of people are going to carry around because they saw it on TV, and that's what they'll remember. Okay, so if Doug Boylan is able to have the injunction dissolved, then we'll get to vote in a referendum on whether or not whether we want to keep Bell's law or not. Now let's go in and see what the story actually says. The Election Commission will be a party in the legal battle over the controversial Guam abortion law. With the overturning by the Supreme Court last year of Roe versus Wade, the jurisdiction over abortion laws is now back with individual states and territories. Last month, Attorney General Douglas Moylan filed a motion to vacate a 1990 Guam District Court order that stopped the implementation of the abortion ban. That has set in motion a new legal showdown in federal court. But the abortion law also calls for a voter referendum, and that's where the Election Commission comes in. Quote, this is from legal counsel Vince Camacho, our counsel for the Election Commission. Quote, you are enjoined in this lawsuit because part of the law required the Election Commission to conduct a referendum at the general election in 1990. And so you are a party because of that part of the law. I don't see us really getting engaged in the litigation because in reality, if they lift the injunction, we don't have a choice, right?
This is the legal counsel.
Yeah. It's not like Guam Election Commission has a choice. If they don't lift it, we don't do anything. The board approved having counsel represent them in court. So this is not a very articulate sentence. We don't have a choice. We have to have the referendum. We don't have a choice. We can't decide one way or the other because the general election in 1990 has passed, right? So if you're thinking that this headline for the story is the end of it, don't be misled. Because I can't tell you how this will turn out. If the injunction is lifted, it'll mean that certainly the substantive parts of Bell's Law will come into play. That is, all of the prohibitions, all the criminal provisions outlawing abortion will come back to life. Whether or not a court is going to say, well, it was supposed to have happened in November of 1990, but, since you missed that deadline, if the legislature wants to have a referendum, they're going to have to enact a new law. That's approach number one. Or approach number two, since that deadline has passed, it's up to the election commission. We're going to construe that language. Instead of saying general election in 1990, we're going to construe it to mean next general election, which would mean the general election in 2024. Now, I suspect there's ancient case law on that point floating around somewhere. I certainly don't have the time to run it down, but that's how this will turn. Now, the reason that I called it GEC versus abortion was because of Vince Camacho's use of the magic word that begins with a C, choice. Is Vince Camacho pro-choice?
This was a confusing, not just that sentence, that the last paragraph. Could you explain that, why it was included and what that means? Do you see what I'm talking about?
The board members having counsel represent them in court not in their individual capacities, in their official capacities.
Right.
Certainly.
Is he talking about this injunction?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the representation for?
Well, the election commission members are nominal parties, because remember, when you sue or when you bring a petition for an injunction, you don't sue the law. You sue those who are supposed to enforce the law. So they were named defendant. The attorney general, the governor, the election commission were all named defendants. So if the case is going to come before the court, then whether or not you see those defendants having a very important role, they should be represented by counsel. And since Vince is not in-house, since he's private counsel, they've got to tell him it's okay for you to do it because he's going to bill them for it. Yeah. But I don't know where they got off with this, represent them in their individual capacities as commissioners, in their official capacities commissioners. Because I don't think he can represent them in their individual capacities as commissioners. Because they
work as a collective.
Well, because he's working for the election commission, not for each individual person. Yeah, sometimes I can sympathize with the reporters. They're not lawyers. They haven't been to law school. But I would think that it would be really helpful for lawyers, for media outlets to have somebody on a standby basis who would take a phone call from time to time and not charge an arm and a leg to say, no, that's not right. This is what it means. But, well, I guess I know a little bit about it. I've kind of done both.
Or they can tune in between 4 and 6 o'clock.
That's the best advice. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go to something that came out of the District of Columbia here. It's pretty interesting, dealing with criminal law and the political relationships between, let's head for Churchill Downs, and I'll come back to this.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
How fitting it is that we end this section of Tall Tales on a racetrack. Churchill Downs. Yeah, and I was ready, you know, had the Land Trust Commission not given Henry that 90-day extension, I was ready to proffer Churchill Downs as a substitute for Smoking Wheels, but I didn't have to. But I was thinking about you, Henry.
Hey, Bob, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, we need a little bit more than 1 or 2 horsepower, though.
You need what?
We need a little bit more than just horsepower at Churchill Downs.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I wanted to, I still want to extend the invitation to you and anybody in the crew that you want to bring out there anytime next week. I'm open. I'd like to answer all your questions. I think it'll open up a whole bunch of new angles or ideas on what you think of the track and what's going on.
Well, thanks, Henry. I'll take that into consideration.
And yeah, we are very thankful that we got the 90-day extension. The guys were meeting early next week to make sure everything goes good for Smoky Wheels. The guys from Japan are so happy. They are, they made a big leap of faith with us in that they said, well, we got to book the shipping now in order to make it. And if we don't book it and we don't use it, we got to use it. So we're coming whether you have a race or not. And I said, okay, but we may not. And they said, that's okay. We'll bring our cars. You protest if you don't have the track. And I said, that's not necessary, but they really want to see the track continue. And now we've got 8 container loads of cars and motorcycles, cars and ATVs coming, mainly cars, and they're really excited to come for the 40th anniversary.
Well, that sounds good, Henry. I hope it works out for you.
I do too, and we want to invite everybody up there. It'll be April 23rd, 21st to the 23rd. So be looking for it, and again, really would like to invite you and the crew there. Anybody that's got questions about the track there at the station, and I'll make myself available anytime that suits your schedule. So please let me know.
Very good, Henry. Thank you very much for the offer.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
So long. Yeah, well, there we go. And I'm wishing him well on his Smoking Wheels. No question about that. And I'll give him a high marks for he's open enough to expose himself to the potentially withering cross-examination that occurs on Tall Tales, which an awful lot of people are not willing to do. So I give him high marks on that one.
What a great disposition.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we'll put that, and maybe I might make a mark in my calendar, April 23rd, and I'll pick on him a little bit every day to help with kind of like an advertising thing, kind of like I do with the Red Rice Restaurant in Vegas. Kind of keep it up there in the skyline for him. Best I could do, I suppose, Jose.
It's almost like you're your own trust.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to the next item here, Holmes versus the Republicans. And I'm going to the District of Columbia. A couple of interesting things here. One is the woke approach to enforcement of criminal law. And the other thing is the relationship between entities in the United States that are not one of the 50. The District of Columbia is not a state. So in some respects, it's in the same position as the territory of Guam is. And here's how it goes. This is in the Spectator magazine. It's called D.C. Diary by Oliver Wiseman. When the House of Representatives voted to overturn a pair of laws recently passed by the Council of the District of Columbia this week, Eleanor Norton Holmes, the district's non-voting delegate, delivered an uncompromising and partisan denunciation. Okay, now the District of Columbia, as you know, is an area that cannot be any larger than 10 miles square, given up by a state or parts of states, and it's the seat of the national government. So Virginia and Maryland contributed land. It was an interesting trade-off that the Virginians wanted the nation's capital to be basically in Virginia. It's in Maryland, and there was a trade-off dealing with some state and national debt that caused it to go from instead of New York to where it's located now. But the the District of Columbia, for much of its history, was actually the city council of the District of Columbia was the United States Congress, and the mayor was the president of the United States. They've had home rule twice. The first time they screwed it up and it was taken away from them. They've got it now, so they have a District of Columbia Council, which is kind of like a state government, except they have a mayor instead of a governor. So this is what the governor said when the House enacted passed two bills that would overturn District of Columbia law. Now, you know that whatever our legislature does, if Congress doesn't like it, they can pass a law and they can overcome local law. They've never done it, but the possibility is always there. It's spelled out in the Organic Act. So this is what Ms. Holmes said. I can only conclude that the Republican leadership believes D.C. residents, and here we go, the majority of whom are black or brown. Identity politics. So you got to lead with that. Are unworthy or incapable of governing themselves, she said. But Holmes' black and white account of the House vote to block two controversial pieces of legislation, one a revamped and relaxed criminal code, the other allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections. Talk about allowing aliens to vote in the elections at our national capital. Omitted some inconvenient details. One is that D.C.'s own mayor, Holmes is their representative to Congress, not the mayor. D.C.'s own mayor, Muriel Bowser, is opposed to the criminal law changes that soften penalties for violent crimes at a time when their rates are rising fast in Washington. She vetoed the measure last month, but the council exercised its right to press on anyway. Another is just how many Democrats sided with the Republican leadership on the votes. 42 Democrats voted to block the voting legislation. 42 Democrats in the House. 31 voted to overturn the revisions to the criminal code. Among those 31 was Minnesota lawmaker Angie Craig, who was, on the same day of the vote, assaulted in the elevator of her Washington apartment building by a homeless man. Bowser, usually a staunch opponent of any congressional meddling in D.C. politics, has been notably quiet about the votes on the Hill. Axios reports that her office did not lobby lawmakers to vote against the blocking measure. And so, with the vote on overturning the bill due in the Senate, the politics of D.C.'s latest standoff with Congress is a bit more complicated than it has been in the past, or than Holmes would have you believe. With the White House opposed to blocking measures, which require the president's signature, the D.C. Council's new laws are all but certain to remain intact. But the showdown between D.C. and Congress could intensify further. Georgia Republican Andrew Clyde is drafting a bill that would repeal the Home Rule Act, the legislation which gives D.C. residents the ability to elect a mayor and council. That, too, would be dead on arrival as long as there is a Democrat in the White House. But what Holmes this week called a new level of hostility to the District of Columbia is sure to remain for the foreseeable future, not because of some fresh level of partisan hostility, but because D.C. powers that be seem so complacent about the safety of the city's residents. Okay, talking about Washington, I got to say goodbye to our president. Let's go, Brendan.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ohio residents still demanding answers and help. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The Ohio EPA says there's no evidence of hazardous materials that would cause health problems after the train derailment early this month. Federal EPA Administrator Michael Regan.
EPA has assisted with the screening of more than 480 homes under the voluntary screening program offered to residents, and no detections of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride were identified.
But residents who say they and their animals are suffering from all kinds of health problems don't believe the test results. And Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio tells Fox News.
The railroad has completely failed to clean up the toxic soil that's leaking into the riverways, into the waterways, and into the groundwater.
Norfolk Southern trying to reassure residents that it's not going anywhere and that it will be there to help, even as it faces lawsuits. A power disruption at New York's JFK International Airport causing travel headaches. Fox 5 New York's Stephanie Bertini reports the problem started Thursday morning.
The outage impacting the terminal's ability to accept inbound and outbound flights. Inside the terminal, frustrated passengers dealing with cancellations, flights moved by airlines to other airports, and confusion over where to get information on what to do next. In a statement, the Port Authority said JFK's Terminal 1 power outage was caused by an electrical panel failure, which also caused a small isolated fire overnight that was immediately extinguished.
But the problem's not fixed yet. JFK tweeting Terminal 1 will remain closed Friday. And President Biden tells the nation the 3 objects shot down after the Chinese spy balloon were most likely private research or recreational objects, not spycrafts, adding he will order any object deemed a threat to the U.S. shot down. America's listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The